One of my least favorite genres of entertainment is horror. I don't hate the idea of horror. Some people like the feeling of being afraid while watching a scary movie, reading a scary book, and even playing a scary video game, but it's just not for me. Horror movies usually bore me, and horror games don't really interest me that much. I'm personally more into action games. Anyway, I know that people enjoy the sense of danger that horror can bring, all while being at a safe distance. However, I believe that horror can be a very difficult thing to get right. Aside from books and movies, the genre of horror has made its mark in the medium of video games. You see, unlike a movie where you watch other people try to survive a scary situation, horror games have you, the player, survive a scary scenario. So, you can't just sit back and watch, unless you're not the one playing. Also, you feel on edge for pretty much the whole game, which can last at least several hours, as opposed to only a couple of hours from watching a movie. One horror game series that took the internet by storm just a few years ago is Five Nights at Freddy's. Ever since the release of the first game, the series has obtained a large following. Now, as popular as those games have gotten, while decent games on their own, they're not as scary as they lead on. Don't get me wrong, they are scary games, but not as scary as you might think. Now, before the members of the FNAF community come after me with their negative comments, let me explain what the FNAF series does right and what it does wrong when it comes to being horror. Now, I'm not here to review the games, I'm going to criticize them on how well they do horror. First, what the FNAF games do right, each game does a great job on creating a dark and creepy atmosphere, the kind where you can't drop your guard for even a moment. The entire time you're playing any of the games, you feel this sense of dread and danger, hoping you can survive the night without your character getting killed by any of the animatronics. With that constant fear and feeling of uneasiness, you become your own worst enemy. I could commend FNAF for that. As I said before, horror games aren't for me, but I know some people find games like this fun, and I can respect that. However, I believe that FNAF has a few major flaws that keeps it from being great horror. These are the things I don't like about the games. The first drawback is that after playing it for a while, it stops being scary and surviving each night just becomes a chore. Every time your character gets killed, you must restart the entire current night all over again. This gets very annoying, especially late into the game when the animatronics become more aggressive and really want you dead. As a video game, I know they must get harder as they go on, and people can argue that having to start the night over adds to the feeling of fear while playing, and I suppose that's not wrong. However, after dying enough times on the same night, it starts getting very frustrating and annoying. Imagine only being one in-game hour away from clearing the night when suddenly one of the animatronics decides to show up and forcing you back to the beginning of the night. After that, Freddy and his friends go from frightening to insufferable. The next problem I have with FNAF is that the only real scary part of the game is just being jump scared whenever your character dies. The atmosphere is still creepy and all, but it relies too much on jump scaring the player. Jump scares are the laziest form of horror. It takes advantage of our natural human reaction of being caught off guard, and it's not hard to do. You're shocked for only a couple of seconds before you realize that you must replay that night from the very beginning again, which, as I just explained, can be frustrating, and you start feeling more angry than afraid. Another problem I have with the series is that too many sequels were released way too soon. I'm all for sequels and all, but not when they are released in such a short amount of time between each other. A good entry in the series should have its own identity and feel, but the first 4 games came out within 1 year. This makes the games feel like they just blend together. They feel like they are the same game, just with a different coat of paint. Since these games were released so close to each other, they feel more like expansions rather than new games. The flaws that I just described could be forgiven if it wasn't for this last one. I think this is FNAF's biggest flaw, that being how commercialized it has become. I feel like the series has really sold out just to make a quick buck. Now, this normally wouldn't be too bad. A lot of popular horror movies and games have had merchandise based on them, and I can understand trying to profit off something that's popular. However, so much of the game's merchandise has been heavily targeted towards kids. If you go into any Walmart, Target, or some other big store where you can find things for children, you'll probably find kids' toys, posters, t-shirts, and even school and birthday party supplies based off the FNAF games. You might be asking, well, what's the big deal? Who cares if FNAF has toys and other kid stuff? It shouldn't matter. Now, I know that a lot of the FNAF fandom is pretty young, and that's fine. However, when I walk into a store and see these toys and other merchandise that are intended for children that are fans of the series, I can't help but take these scary characters less seriously. You see, the thing about horror characters is that in order to find them scary or threatening, you must first take them seriously as a threat. I'm only making such a big deal about this because the games take themselves seriously. Anyone who has played any of the FNAF games can tell you that, despite having a young audience, they are definitely not meant for kids. You know why? Because the games try to be as terrifying as possible. If a character like Jason Voorhees was made to be more kid-friendly and suddenly had kids' toys and other stuff intended for young children made, like t-shirts, lunchboxes, backpacks, posters, books, and even party supplies, how would you feel about his character? After a while, he would probably seem less scary and less of a threat, meaning that from then on, when you see one of his movies, you'll subconsciously take him less seriously because in the back of your mind, you'll be reminded of all that kid-friendly merchandise of him that you saw. If Jason was marketed more towards kids, then that could ruin his character because that's not what he's about. Jason is supposed to be threatening, and he is scary because people take him seriously as a horror character. Whenever he shows up on screen during one of his movies, you know he's a straight up killer and that he means business. Freddy and the other animatronics are supposed to have the same kind of feeling because they are horror characters. In the early days of the series, I thought that Freddy and his friends were creepy and terrifying because that's how they were portrayed in game. But now I just don't feel that way about them anymore. They're just not as scary or threatening as they used to be, and I'm sure that others don't think that they're that scary anymore either. Now, if you're a fan of the FNAF series and you disagree with me, then that's fine. Don't let me stop you from enjoying what you like. I'm just some guy stating my opinion on the internet. I will see you next game.